Kojou was a perverted broke-ass scumbag who lived a depressing high school life on the Demon District Island where demons and humans coexist. However, his peaceful life of lazing around and waiting to hit it big with a crypto airdrop was destroyed when he acquired the powers of the Fourth Progenitor, a powerful vampire so dreadful that his existence was thought to be a myth. While walking one evening, Kojou witnessed a girl trip and was in the perfect position for him to feed on her. But he held his impulse because he understood the bro code and didn't want to ruin a fellow bro's date. The next day, while studying for his makeup exams, he complained that he wanted to shop for the latest hentai. But Yaes reminded him he needed to take the test or he'd drop out and turn out to be a useless failure like his dad. Apart from Yaes, a girl named Asagi also accompanied him to make sure he finished the key topics, but Kojou thought she was just looking for an excuse to get free lunches from him. After a while, she decided to leave for work, so Yaes also followed her because two guys sitting at the edge of a restaurant was totally sus. After paying for their meal, he became so broke that he couldn't afford the train home, which made him walk in the hot sun. When he noticed a stalker was secretly following him, he headed into a mall and tried to lose her. However, she was so persistent that he had to fake a rom-com encounter, bumping into her by the door hoping to reveal her true intentions. The girl quickly took a defensive stance thinking he was going to attack her, but when she called him the Fourth Progenitor, Kojou spoke to her in Italian so it looked like he was a foreigner who didn't understand what she was saying. She went ahead to call his name, but he told her she got the wrong guy before walking out of the mall. He noticed that the dumb girl's miniskirt attracted some delinquent pervs to her, which made him observe them for a bit. He noticed they wore silver bands, which was the identity of demon registration numbers, and when the men tried to harass the girl, he moved to intervene only to stop when the girl lashed at the men using fancy moves powered by lightning magic. He noticed the Giga Ugly was a werewolf while his partner was a D-type vampire, who for some reason doesn't get barbecued by the sun. The vampire immediately released his magic restraint, causing the surveillance department to issue a temporary evacuation to ordinary civilians in the area. The vampire went ahead and summoned a flaming horse familiar ready to clap the lowly who refused to call him daddy. She wasn't the least scared and proceeded to equip herself with a mechanized spear she called Sekiro. With this spear, she one-shots the super-fast horse, sending it back to the depths of hell to meet my ex, after which she launches herself up to slay the vampire. Just then, Kojou interfered with the battle and told the vampire to make himself scarce, reminding him to stop hitting on lowlies. When she asked why he interfered, he responded that it was normal to stop anyone who bullied the weak. She revealed that she wasn't breaking any rules since he was the first person to use magic in a public area, and even summoned a familiar. Kojou reminded her she was the one that attacked first, and even though it was because he saw her plot, it wasn't enough to attack him since she was ugly. Win-kun decided to embarrass her again, which made her accuse Kojou of peeping, but he told her it was her fault for standing on top of a truck like a poster girl. She came down and packed up her sword, and after she left, Kojou stumbled on her wallet where he found out her name was Yukina. The next day, he went to her school hoping to return her wallet, but when he learned she wasn't present from a teacher, he decided to wait outside the school. While he went through her wallet like a creep, he was suddenly turned on by her scent, which made his vampire urge kick in. He managed to keep it in check by sucking his own nosebleed, but Yukina had a glimpse of what happened and concluded he was a degenerate pervert who even got a nosebleed just for sniffing a girl's wallet. He tried to tell her a surfboard shouldn't think so highly of herself, but this only enraged her, so she tried to take the wallet by force. He told her to explain why she was following him the previous day, but the impatient girl moved to unbox her spear because violence is always the answer. However, her stomach started growling, and since he noticed there was money in her wallet, he apologized for making her starve by handing it to her. He also made her buy him lunch as thanks for not stealing her wallet, and while they ate, she explained she used to attend a training school for the Lion King organization. Clueless Kojou had no idea about the organization, which was shocking since it was a popular sect that hunted vampires and demons. So she explained that they are a secret agency that works to prevent large-scale magic disasters and terrorism. She revealed she is a sword-shaman who was sent by the organization to observe him, but he was more shocked because the organization chose to ignore her flatness, which was a much greater threat to humanity than he was. She goes on to state that he is considered to have the strength of an entire nation's military, which meant his existence was a threat to the balance of power. She asked if there was a reason he was hiding his identity as the Fourth Progenitor, the strongest vampire of legends, but he told her the island had always been his home and he only just recently became a vampire. On hearing this, she claimed it was impossible for a human to become a vampire because the means of gaining immortality had been lost a long time ago. This made him reveal that the previous fourth progenitor forced him to be her heir. But when she tried to interrogate him further, the memories began to cause him pain, so he had to stop thinking about it. She decided not to pry further and revealed she still had her mission to observe and eliminate him if necessary, so she'll be accompanying him everywhere if possible. Some days later, Yukina relocated to the room next to him to make her stalker job easier. And while inside the room, Kojou noticed she barely had any property, not even a futon to sleep on, but she told him she could sleep on the bare floor. This made him realize why she was so unusually flat, so he made her promise to go shopping for some household necessities. Later that day, he went to take his final makeup exam with Natsuki, his English teacher, and an attack mage who was actually 26 years old, despite her lowly look, as well as one of the few people who knew that he was the fourth progenitor. After evaluating him, she asked about the incident where a vampire unleashed a familiar in town while reminding him not to do anything stupid that would reveal his true identity. He then asked if she had any knowledge of the Lion King organization, which made her explain that he should stay clear of any of their members because the whole agency was basically set up to deal with anomalies like him. Still, the stupid guy decided to accompany Yukina to the mall that afternoon. From her behavior, he learned that she didn't have much knowledge about the outside world, as she thought everything was some kind of powerful weapon. Back at the apartment building, they stumbled on Nagisa, who is Kojou's sister, but before he could introduce them, he found out they were friends from school. In his room, Yukina even helped him with his homework despite being 2 classes above her. She noticed he was on the basketball team, prompting her to ask if he quit because he became a vampire. He told her that was not the case and that he was a selfish player who his teammates secretly hated, so he just quit. He also claimed he thought about using his new powers to fight evil, but he felt the world didn't need another Batman. While heading out to the convenience store later that night, they stumbled on Natsuki, who wanted to discipline them for breaking curfew. Just then, there was a big explosion at the other end of town, so they used the distraction the explosion created to run away. They noticed that it was a very big familiar that was wreaking havoc, and this prompted Yukina to arm herself ready to investigate the situation. When Kojou asked to accompany her, she told him he was walking on thin ice and shouldn't make any moves that would draw unwanted attention to himself. She jumped on top of a moving train that took her close to the location where she found the Phoenix familiar and its master, who looked like someone who just saw his negative paternity test. When it attacked with its flame breath, a giant hand manifestation deflected the flames into smaller bits that hit Yukina's train, causing it to crash. She escaped unhurt and observed the hand dominating the Phoenix by draining its magic, while the master was also defeated below. When the unknown opponent showed himself, she told him to stop fighting the disabled demon, as it was against the treaty to attack demons. As a response, the man made it clear he thought the treaty was crap and moved to finish his fight with a giant axe. Yukina blocked his attack with her spear, which the man recognized to be the Demon Slayer spear, which is the secret weapon of the Lion King organization. This only made him more excited, as he requested a duel while introducing himself as Rudolph, a combat deacon from Europe. When he moved to attack, she activated her spell using a special incantation and immediately took the offensive by launching fast-paced strikes that pushed him back. However, he used a move to counterattack, hitting her with a powerful blow that injured her leg, although she blocked the attack. Rudolph called his familiar from above, who used the giant hand manifestation to attack her. She managed to stop the hand for a little while, but the familiar suddenly manifested a second hand and was about to crush her. Her life began to flash before her, although it was mainly Kojou's face she saw for obvious reasons. Just then, Kojou showed up and made the familiar take a mandatory nap with a single punch. His vampire eyes suddenly activated, causing Rudolph to recognize him as a noble vampire who could be the rumored fourth progenitor. Kojou begged him to leave the town immediately, but he claimed he was on a mission to acquire a large amount of magic powers. His familiar rose up ready for another round, so Kojou readily went to give her a piece of him. However, this time he was blown away by her punch, yeeting him to the sky covered in blood, but this only made him surge with more power. He began to surge with great power like a charged Pikachu, which made him scream in pain like those unnecessarily awful werewolf transformations. But at least Rudolph and his familiar got scared and chickened out of the battle. The next day, the reporters announced that although there were no known casualties from the midnight incident, it caused a blackout in the area, and also the destruction of the train rail linking the island to Tokyo. On their way to school, Kojou asked if she was going to report the incident to her organization, as his outburst caused the blackout. But she responded that he wasn't the main culprit, and even decided to thank him for saving her life. She revealed that she might have to report what happened eventually, so she asked why he suddenly went berserk with the Pikachu familiar, to which he responded that he couldn't control them because they haven't accepted him as their master. When she asked why the familiars he inherited from the previous progenitor had not accepted him, he explained that it was most likely due to the fact that he was a virgin vampire. She almost volunteers to help him out like any good friend should, but he told her what he really meant was that he hasn't sucked a human's blood yet. In class, Asagi complained that she had to work overtime to program a new software after the previous night's incident blew the island's mainframe. Kojou thought she was pretty cool as she could work as a tech genius to help out the island, unlike him who was useless and broke. While they conversed, the rest of the class boys gathered around to look at their school's latest hottie, and when they found out she was in Nagis's class, they met Kojou to hook them up. He soon found out Yukina was the girl they were talking about, and while he couldn't fathom why they were infatuated with her, Natsuki showed up and instructed him to come to the counseling room with Yukina because she knew it was them goofing around the convenience store the previous night. On hearing that he was hanging out with a babe at night, the other guys looked at him angrily while Asagi thrashed the assignment she helped him write out of jealousy. In the counseling room, Natsuki explained to them how there have been several incidents where vampires have been attacked at night. She told him he was also at risk of being targeted, so he should avoid meeting girls at night. After leaving her, Yukina suggests they find Rudolph and his homunculus familiar before the police do, because if he were captured alive and interrogated, he might reveal his identity to the public. She even made a list of buildings belonging to the church where they could be hiding. However, Kojou told her he'd probably be somewhere in plain sight where he could blend in perfectly. He decided to beg Asagi, who worked for the island data management, to do a full scan of offices belonging to the church, but she could only find a single connection. He and Yukina immediately headed to the abandoned homunculus facility that was abandoned years ago, but when they got to the main floor, she told him to sit out the battle as he is an amateur who, despite being overpowered, was useless when it mattered most. He explained that he was just worried about her because she didn't look capable of taking in two people at the same time. And with that argument, she decided to allow him to accompany her while making him promise to obey her every command. When they got to the door, it looked rusty and unused, which made him think that they had the wrong address. However, she used her spear to dispel the illusion magic, which allowed them access into the facility that had so many homunculus made out of all the nut he thought were safe in the trash can. One of the homunculus showed up and told them to leave the place as the island would soon sink because it was only a transient earth floating over an intersection of dragon veins from the sea. Rudolph also showed up explaining that they were about to find the treasure keeping the island stable, and once they removed it, it was going to sink. Kojou was more pissed that he was using a girl to host a familiar, but the man claimed it was the only way to make a familiar obey a non-vampire, knowing full well her life force would be rapidly drained if he continued. He explained that he tried to avoid that by feeding the island vampires to her, which also helped her complete the spell sealed in her. Yukina accused him of using her like a tool, but he reminded her that the Lion King organization literally bought her from her parents on eBay and was using her the same way. The whole talk only made Kojou so mad that he unleashed his Pikachu familiar in a blind rage. This time, Rudolph's familiar materialized into a full Buddha body, so that even when attacked by Kojou with full force, he is repelled by a negative force field. Yukina also tried to attack with her spear, but once she made contact with the body, the power of her spear began to resonate with it. Rudolph revealed he had analyzed her powers from the previous battle, which allowed him to copy her spear's formula that can easily annihilate vampires. He moved to finish her off with his axe, only for Kojou to become her meat shield, spraying her with his fluids that made her gag in shock. Rudolph twisted his axe inside him and ripped his head away from his body while she held the head in tears because it was the only thing he was able to give her. Meanwhile, at Asaga's workplace, there is an attack on the building, and the intruders turned out to be Rudolph and his homunculus, who were leaving a trail of dead bodies behind them. At the same time, Kojou's head reattached and his body healed itself as though time was reversed just for him. Yukina scolded him for making her waste her tears thinking he was dead, but he told her he had no idea he was going to revive. There was a sudden earthquake which made him quickly check his phone to see if anything was going on in town. He found out the Keystone Gate where Asagi works had been attacked and she was trapped inside the burning place. He called to check up on her, after which he made her tell him the whereabouts of the intruders, who were having fun destroying the entire fleet of soldiers who tried to stop their advance. She figured out they were heading to an anchor block where a piece of metal helps to absorb impacts and vibrations from the island to keep it stable. When he told her to check for a treasure, she tried to access it but was blocked out because she didn't have military clearance. However, she went ahead to hack it using her AI, and found out the treasure was the remains of a saint of the church. Yukina wanted to head out to stop Rudolph, however Kojou was conflicted because it might be better to use his powers to evacuate the people around him instead of fighting a losing battle. He explained that the guy wasn't even doing something wrong and he didn't have the right to judge him since he was weak. In her brain, he was a weak-ass pussy whining about how weak he was, so she cut herself and offered her blood to him so he could level up from a virgin vampire to one his familiar would acknowledge. Like a self-absorbed heroine, she tried to convince him to risk his life for people he barely knew, and since it was a free bite, he decided to help himself by going slow at first before digging his fangs into her neck. Meanwhile, Rudolph arrived at his location where he shared tears of joy because his lifelong dream of retrieving the treasure the island stole from the church was about to be fulfilled. Shortly after, Kojou showed up alongside Yukina to stop him from acquiring the holy relic he wanted to obtain. Rudolph made them understand that the creator of the island committed a great sin by dabbling in heretical magic and using their saint as a human sacrifice to stabilize the island. They all got into a heated argument about morals where everyone wanted to be in the right, so they decided to just let their fists do the talking. Kojou charged towards the familiar, armed with his electric-type familiar, but Yukina went ahead of him to confront her in battle so that he could focus on Rudolph. Rudolph barely managed to avoid a punch that could have torn him into bits, which made him realize Kojou was not playing around this time. He too decided to get serious, so he revealed a holy armor that glowed so brightly that it blindsided Kojou, causing him to take a defensive position to regain his sight. Kojou then released his fifth familiar called Regulus, and immediately, a bolt of lightning descended on the entire building, causing the familiar to materialize as a giant lion that eats the guy towards the wall effortlessly. This made him call back his familiar to protect him, but when they clashed, her familiar set up a barrier that deflected every attack that made contact with her. Yukina launched herself in the air while summoning the power of her spear, which she used to focus on one spot on the barrier, enabling her to shatter it completely and allowing Regulus to Pikachu the leaving light out of her, causing her materialized familiar to disintegrate completely. While Rudolph was distracted by her defeat, Yukina used a close-range spell to destroy his holy armor, allowing Kojou to sucker punch his ugly face, causing him to pass out. Kojou went down to bite the homunculus, but Yukina was pissed that she wasn't enough for him, so he quickly explained that he was only trying to make her familiar obey him, which would also make her live longer. Elsewhere, we find out Kaze is a secret agent working for the Lion King organization, and in reality, Yukina was assigned to Kojou to become his lover who he can feed off rather than his observer. That same night, Natsuki single-handedly stopped a werewolf from detonating a bomb on a cargo ship. The guy thought he could handle the goth loli because he was so much bigger. However, none of his attacks could touch her, and just when he discovered she was the notorious Witch of the Void who could manipulate space, she captured him with her enchanted chains before he escaped. The next morning, Kojou accidentally walked in on Yukina dressing in his sister's room, but instead of leaving immediately, he stared at her like a perverted idiot, which made her send him away with a kick. On their way to school, Yukina apologized since she made him get a nosebleed, but she still wasn't sure if it was the outcome of the kick or his virgin mind that hadn't seen a plot before. He tried to defend himself, but Nagisa reminded him that she told him beforehand that Yukina was coming over because they had to take their measurements for their cheerleader outfit. He claimed that he didn't remember anything she said, so she had to explain once again that her class boys went as far as to beg on their knees just to convince her royal flatness to cheer them on during their game. After parting ways, Kojou stumbled on Asagi, who made him carry her stuffs without much objections as he didn't have enough balls to refuse a girl's request. On arriving at the class, Yaze told them they had been paired together to represent their class in a mixed badminton match during the school's sports festival. When she asks why they had to pair her with such a useless idiot, the class rep informs her it was her one chance to make him fall for her. Elsewhere, a group led by Natsuki led an inquiry to a secret lab where the innocent-looking researcher turned out to be Gorilla Grodd. When it tried to attack her, she outmaneuvered it before instructing the Astarte, a homunculus girl who now worked under her, to deal with an unregistered demon threat. She then unleashed a powerful aura to summon her familiar powers, which she used to pound him to the wall, immediately returning him to a skinny form. Back at the school, Kojou decided to cool off with a drink, only to be attacked suddenly by some magic arrows that made him hide in the bushes. Two metal familiars showed up in front of him, but since he couldn't afford to use his powers because it would destroy the school, he focused on evading their attacks, and luckily Yukina showed up to defeat the two enemies before they could harm him. He thanked her for saving him while asking if she was stalking him instead of focusing on classes, so she explained that she only responded to her paper familiar which she stuck in his ass for insurance. While investigating who the enemy might be, some students noticed them with weapons, making her move to erase their memory. Kojou told her there was no need for extreme measures as anyone who saw her would probably think she was a cosplayer. He found a letter the Shikigamis left behind after being defeated, but Asagi walked into the scene and assumed the letter was from Yukina, which made her leave the scene heartbroken. Afterwards, Yukina explained that the letter was from Lord Dimitri of Ardial, a nation under the warlord's dominion. Since this warlord is the first progenitor who controls Europe, it meant that Dimitri was a noble pure-blooded vampire from his line who should be feared. On getting home, they got a package from the Lion King organization, who somehow knew he was invited to a party and had brought a dress for them to wear. That evening, they arrived at Dork, where the boat where the party was being held was anchored. Yukina was embarrassed by the dress she wore, but Kojou loved it since it was easier to undress her with his eye, and she noticed and called him a pervert who'd die a virgin. He noticed she was wearing a hairpin, which was unusual, so she told him it was a gift from a childhood friend who became an attack mage. Once inside the boat, they looked so out of place that they decided to head to the top deck, where their host might be hanging out. However, they are greeted by a familiar's attack, causing Kojou to push Yukina out of its way before killing it with only his aura. Lord Dimitri showed up shortly after to apologize for his rudeness with the excuse that he only wanted to test the level of his strength. The guy even blows him a kiss, making him freak out, while a girl suddenly attacks him for being too close to Yukina. She pushed him away and suffocated Yukina with her huge rax, while Kojou watched speechlessly, hoping she'd do the same to him. He finds out she is Sayaka, Yukina's childhood friend who was assigned to be Lord Dimitri's observer while he is on the island. Meanwhile, Asagi complained to Yaes that she wasn't comfortable with Kojou sneaking around with Yukina like they were secretly dating, and this made Yaes advise her to shoot her shot because he was pretty sure they weren't dating. However, he thinks Kojou was only entertaining Yukina because she had dirt on him. Back at the boat, Dimitri seemed to know about Regulus and the previous fourth progenitor, whose name was Avrora. He claimed that they were in love and began to make weird moves towards Kojou since he had inherited her blood. He tried to remind him that he was a guy, but the blonde dude was Gen Z, who wouldn't let gender similarities come between love matters. Yukina tried to make him stop, but this backfired as he managed to figure out he was his potential blood partner, which meant that he was his rival for Kojou's love. When she asked him if he invited them over just to hit on a high schooler, he didn't hesitate to acknowledge her. However, he revealed that there was another reason. A man named Christoph Gardos, who is a notorious terrorist and the leader of a radical group called Black Death Emperor faction, had snuck into the island. Sayaka explained that the group's goal was to revoke the peace treaty that let humans and demons coexist on the island, after which they would launch an attack on the first progenitor's domain. This made Yukina ask if he was on the island to assassinate Gardos, but he claimed that would be troublesome as his familiars would inevitably destroy the island in the process. This made Yukina volunteer to take care of the organization since Kojou could hardly summon his familiars. However, Dimitri claimed she would have to prove if she was worthy of even working with Kojou. The next day, they paid a visit to Natsuki, whose office was on the top floor of the school building. They immediately asked what she knew about Gardos, and when she inquired where they heard about him, they told her it was from Dimitri. There, they found out Astarte Rudolph's homunculus was working for her as an assistant, but it looked like she was just making her do her job. She explained that there was no need to look for Gardos, as not only was Dimitri a monster who could easily handle him, but the Nalakuvra, which is an ancient weapon his group was looking for, was nowhere to be found as the map hasn't been deciphered by anyone yet. She told them to focus on Dimitri, who was not to be trusted as he had already devoured 2 vampire elders and might add him to the list. This made Kojou decide to master his powers just in case his life was threatened, so Yukina asked if he needed to suck her blood in order to achieve that, to which he responded that he had no intention of making her anemic. She became upset that he didn't want her, and like any guy, Kojou decided to switch his attention to Asagi, whom he shamelessly asked to look up the Nalakuvra using her connection. Immediately they head out of the class together. Yaes used a skill to monitor their movement into the student council office, where they find out the Nalakuvra is an artifact that works like a biochemical weapon. A teacher suddenly barged in, so they hid under the table in an uncomfortable position that made him realize she was wearing an earring he bought her some time ago. Since women make his vampire urges kick in, he got a terrible nosebleed, causing Asagi to skip classes and look after him for a while. Once she left to get them something to drink, he was suddenly attacked by Sayaka, who for some reason was so obsessed with Yukina that she was pissed he drank her blood. She began to swing her sword ready to kill him while he tried his best to calm the maniac while dodging her big-ass sword, which she wanted to drill into him. She eventually landed a hit on his chest, causing his powers to go berserk, and when Asagi showed up to complicate things further, he freaked out and let out a burst of energy that sent her flying while frying the systems around the school. While he was holding back another energy surge, Yukina appeared and used the power of her spear to control his powers. When she asked what happened, the two began pointing fingers at each other, so she chose to ignore them and rushed Asagi to the nurse's station, where Astarte examined her physical condition. She woke up shortly after and had the surfboard explain her relationship with Kojou and who the girl with a sword was. Just then Astarte informed them of intruders who had infiltrated the school building. Yukina asked if they were heading for Kojou's location. However, a group of demons showed up in the nurse's room, causing Nagisa to scream in fear as she hadn't seen such ugly creatures in her life. The men tried to shoot her for screaming unnecessarily and drawing unwanted attention to them, so Yukina knocked her out to save her life. The leader of the bunch introduced himself as Gardos and revealed he had a job for Asagi the tech genius. As soon as the group escaped with the three girls after putting Astarte out of commission, Yaze chased after them on the highway, where he ingested a drug that gave him powers allowing him to stay on their trail long enough. Seeing that he wouldn't be able to catch up to the helicopter they were about to board, he ate a bunch of pills that allowed him to project a physical form outside his normal body. However, the projection was destroyed by Dimitri, who claimed it wasn't time to interfere with the terrorists yet, after which he blasted Yaze with a powerful spell that sent him into the depths of the ocean. In the helicopter, Gardos called Asagi a famous genius known far and wide for her hacking skills. He handed her a supercomputer to use in deciphering the control manual of the Nalakubro, which made her ask why he chose her out of every hacker in the world. He explained that he sent a puzzle to over 150 hackers, but not only was she the only one able to solve it, she did it in under 3 hours. He revealed he planned to defeat the Fourth Progenitor, which made her promise not to help him. However, he reminded her that she had already solved the first puzzle, which was actually the activation command, and if she didn't solve the others that would enable them command it, they would simply activate it and let it destroy the island on its own. Before long, Sayaka and Kojou arrived at the base where the girls were being held, and when she asked if he was going to play the knight in shining armor by rescuing everyone with his familiars, he told her he could only control one of his familiars, and that was not until recently when he drank Yukina's blood. Together, they made their way into the base where they met Natsuki in her gothic glory. She tried to make him leave the scene immediately, but Dimitri suddenly showed up to announce that the Nalakuvra had already been released by Gardos. They watched as the gigantic war machine easily destroyed the island police force like they were its plaything, and Gardos made sure Asagi saw its capabilities to convince her to cooperate with him. Yukina then asked if he was working with Dimitri, and he admitted to the fact while explaining that the vampire was not part of their organization and only helped him see how much chaos he could cause with such power. Immediately after he left, Nagisa was possessed by a divine being who instructed them to decipher the manual because Dimitri would surely defeat the Nalakuvra. Outside, he watched excitedly at the destruction it was capable of while Kojou's group stood still, confused about who their real enemy was. He handed an unconscious Yaze to them, after which he told them to watch him battle the machine. He unleashed 2 snake familiars that he merged together to attack, but at the same time, Kojou got a call from Yukina instructing him to hold off the Nalakuvra without damaging it. This made him convince Dimitri to wait until the machine probably killed him before he could go ahead and cure his boredom by battling the ancient machine. Kojou charged towards the machine, dodging its beam attack before going under her, so it had to turn in the opposite direction. While he ran, he was hit by several beam blasts that made him eat dirt, and when the machine moved to finish him with a mega beam blast, Sayaka showed up to block its attack. She revealed that her sword could nullify physical attacks and also create a barrier to block all kinds of attacks. She used the barrier function to slice through one of its big legs, making her confident that she went for the head, only for her attack to be blocked by a powerful force field that repelled the sword before it made contact. It flung her away to the ground, causing Kojou to flee with her behind a barricade, where they caught their breath for some minutes. The Nalakuvra decided to fly away to the mainland, which made Kojou quickly summon Regulus, who descended like a lightning bolt from above and forced the machine down with so much force that it dug a giant hole in the ground. While heading into the deep hole to look for the machine, Sayaka tripped on a rock, which made her fall on Kojou, who didn't fail to grab her airbags for support. She became super dramatic since she loathed being touched by men, but they soon began to have a moment which was then ruined by the machine's reappearance. They watched it heal itself with the seawater falling inside the hole, so Kojou quickly grabbed her arm and made a run for it before it noticed them. Meanwhile, Asagi continued to dedicate every second to deciphering the codes in the manual along with her self-made AI who assisted her in multitasking. Yukina also found a way into the organization's warehouse where she found hundreds of Nalakuvra that hadn't been activated yet. Gardos applauded her for defeating his guards barehanded and asked if she would like to join his harem, but of course she refused as his fake Donald Trump Riz was worthless. She asked him what he planned to do with the army of war machines, so he explained that they were insurance in case he failed to defeat the Fourth Progenitor. He'd send them into his territory to destroy everything he built. He then transformed into a giant werewolf and attacked her with a knife, which she dodged while wondering what kind of pathetic demon uses a weapon. She used a close-range spell that was supposed to destroy his organs, but his thick abs stopped its effect. She tried another attack, but she was also repelled immediately, giving him an opportunity to take the offense again. She quickly headed to the deck where she was given her spear thanks to Ye's wind magic, which allowed him to toss it from a long distance away. With her trusty spear equipped, she goes for another round of exchange with him and chop off his right arm in the process. This made him declare himself the winner, as he still had Asagi and Nagisa in his possession and could now control the war machines thanks to Asagi's genius. Back on the island, both Kojou and Sayaka have been drenched by seawater slowly entering the hole. When she caught him staring at her plot armor, he offered her his jacket to cover up. However, she told him she didn't want it because he smelled like 2 weeks old pizza. While they looked for a way out of the hole, she revealed that she was used to caring for the other girls at their orphanage, as she was very big, so she thanked him for making her feel like a girl for the first time and hugged him while offering her blood to him so he could level up and defeat the Nalakuvra. She then proceeded to take her clothes out of the way, allowing him to satisfy his cravings, and immediately there's a surge of magic power that bursts out over the surface, revealing a new familiar called Minium. At the boat, Yukina is left in the hands of the ugly-ass werewolf underlines, but they were suddenly thrown off the boat using Natsuki's space-time magic. She also freed the 2 girls who were still unconscious, and while they decided what to do next, Yukina got a call from Yaze telling her about the main Nalakuvra command machine that could shut down the others if taken care of. At the same time, Minium left a huge crater in the area due to his rampaging, which made Sayaka upset that his powers do more harm than good. When the Nalakuvra attacked them again, Sayaka blocked its attack with her sword's ability, after which Kojou called forth Minium, who destroyed it in one big thrust. However, the horse was attacked by the commander Nalakuvra that was being controlled by Gardos himself. He and the familiar clashed head-on, causing stray energy blasts to hit the surroundings simultaneously up to the residential areas. Dimitri informed them that the command unit was the queen they had to take care of and even offered to help in the battle. Kojou refused his help once again, stating that he had gotten fed up with everyone treating his home like it was a negligible loss. Yukina also showed up to join the fight, and although she saw that Sayaka had stolen her man, she decided to focus on the battle at hand first. Immediately after she told him that Gardos was mounting the queen, he summoned Regulus, who used its incredible lighting powers to attack the queen. However, when the dust cleared, there wasn't even a dent on its body because Gardos had already experienced the lightning attack and set the Nalakuvra to have resistance against it. Kojou decided to send Minium next. However, its sonic wave attack was like a light breeze to it. The other war machines also repaired themselves and arrived much stronger than before, which made Kojou freak out as he didn't sign up to battle respawning monsters. That was when Yukina revealed that Asagi had secretly created a new command that made the machines self-destruct after using their self-repair function once. The AI told them all they had to do was get the phone to the Queen Nalakuvra and play the long-ass cursing voice note my ex sent me the first time I told her she was more useless than Sakura. To clear a path to the queen, Sayaka transformed her sword into a bow, which was actually its true form, and she used it to shoot a magic arrow that created an isolated space that temporarily shut down the war machines. Next, Kojou attacked with the full strength of his 2 familiars at the same time, which caused the queen to overheat and shut down. Gardos immediately came out of the machine excitedly like an unhinged war maniac. But when he tried to strike Yukina, Sayaka shot away his knife and created an opening for Kojou to punch the living shit out of him. Yukina quickly threw the phone playing the recording of my ex nagging into the queen, and immediately the war machines petrified and turned to rocks. While Dimitri observed the battle from afar, he was met by the third leader of the Lion King organization, who gave him a letter approving his request for an embassy of the warlord's dominion to be established in the Demon District, which automatically made him the ambassador. Not long after, there was a fight in the boat between a 106 centimeters lady and a knight who was trying to prevent her from reaching the girl she sought. He charged his holy sword, which was able to block her powerful enchanted spear, and when her companion showed up, the knight tried to finish them up. However, they didn't take any damage from the attack, after which the lady called Beatrice activated a device that unleashed the power of an angel that overwhelmed the knight. That night, Sayaka, who had now grown so fond of Kojou, informed him that she would be coming to the island soon, as she was going to act as an escort to an important person from a place called Aldager. He didn't understand why she was telling him stuff about her life when she barely knew him, but this only pissed her off because he was colorblind and couldn't see her green light flashing. The next day, Yaze meets up with Natsuki in a facility where a wounded girl is restrained. Yaze revealed the girl was more of an ordinary human than a demon, but she found it hard to believe, as no normal human would have survived that long without a kidney and diaphragm. Dimitri also showed up to inform them that the girl wasn't unconscious because she lost a few organs, but because her attacker used a technique to feast on her spirit. He seemed to know more about the incident, however he didn't divulge any information, only stating that she shouldn't involve Kojou in the case because the players are leagues above him, so he would only end up dying. The next day, Natsuki caught Kojou Yukina and one of her classmates called Kanes caring for a stray cat which violated the rules of the school. She promised to let the offense slide, and in exchange, she forced Kojou to accompany her for her nightly shenanigans. Later that night, he met up with her alongside Astarte, however he soon found out they planned to use him as a human-sized shopping cart. Yukina also tagged along as his observer, although she looked more dressed than the person she was supposed to be observing, which made Natsuki call her a disgraced tsunderes. She informed him about the very incident. Dimitri told her not to involve him, and even went as far as making it his mission to catch the culprit who had been secretly killing people on the island. When he learned that the enemies wore masks and could fly around, he asked if she was sure it wasn't Batman. However, Yukina made him understand how serious the issue is, as she couldn't detect their magic signature the last time they attacked. Just then, they noticed the masked people fighting in the sky, so Natsuki gave the signal to activate several fireworks to create a diversion. She activated a spell that instantly warped them closer to the place of battle, where they observed the masked enemies' attacks looked like a technique called divine channeling rather than magic. Natsuki used her enchanted chains to hold them in place while Yukina tried to knock them cold with her spear. However, they blocked her attack and negated Natsuki's magic. As soon as the winged enemies started to charge a powerful attack, Natsuki instructed Kojou to quickly attack them while he had the chance. They used their attack to destroy the tower, which immediately started to collapse, only for Natsuki to hold it in place with her chains, while Kojou called forth Minium to defend him. However, the masked enemy withstood his familiar's attack and moved to finish them off, but she was struck from above by the other white-haired masked enemy, causing them to continue with their previous fight until one of them was down. The victorious one dug her hands into her opponent's guts like a chef preparing to sauce a chicken, and while she struggled, she broke the white-haired fighter's mask, who turned out to be Kanes, a girl in Nagis's class. Kanes dug her teeth into her opponent's body like a beast, and with tears gushing down her face, she thanked God for the meal and flew away. Yukina and Kojou immediately tracked her house location to a run-down facility where they encountered some weird robot assistants. They requested to see Kanes, only for the receptionist to tell them she was not available. However, when Yukina revealed her identity as a sword-shaman of the Lion King organization, they were told to wait shortly until someone came to attend to them. Shortly after, a woman showed up to introduce herself as Beatrice, the secretary to Kanes' adoptive father Kensei. She asked what they wanted with the owner of the facility, but Yukina told her she would like to speak with the man directly. But she informed them that Kensei was away from the island in another research facility along with his daughter. She decided to show them to the facility, so they were put on a plane that would take them to the facility on another island. While the plane takes off, Yukina begins to freak out, as she has never boarded a flight in her entire life since she was broke like you. She began to yell in terror when the plane took to the sky, so Kojou held her arm to comfort her like a gentleman. They soon arrived at the island that looked completely isolated, and immediately they let down their guard. The pilot ditched them without leaving behind any supplies for them to survive. It immediately dawned on them that everything might have been a trap to get them away from the island, and that's when they realized how fucked they were, as no one knew they were investigating Kanes' origin. After walking around for a while, They found some pillboxes used in battle as well as bullets, which meant that a recent battle occurred on the island. They decided to chill inside one pillbox, as it was better than getting hyper-tanned by the scorching sun on the island. Meanwhile, while Sayaka was investigating on her own, she encountered Yaes, who was secretly stalking her. Although she asked who he really was, he told her it wasn't important and proposed they make a deal where he'll inform her of the whereabouts of Kojou and Yukina, and in exchange she wouldn't investigate his origin. Just then, Asagi and Nagisa arrived at the church to find Yaes conversing with the psycho girl whom Asagi recognized from the incident on the roof when Kojou went berserk. As the confrontation escalated, Sayaka also called her Kojou's fling since she spied on them when they got cozy in school one time. Back at the isolated island, Kojou tried to use his familiar's power to catch some fish. However, he got electrocuted each time as he was too dumb to realize that Regulus was a bad option for the water. Yukina, whom he drenched with seawater, informed him to stop wasting his energy as she had already made lunch. However, he soon learned all she did was slice coconut into different shapes like a fourth grader who had just discovered the wonders of cooking. After taking a sip of her coconut soup, she asked him what he thought of the soup, but Kojou told her the taste reminded him of the times when he used to play house with 2-year-old Nagisa. This made him remember he was supposed to model for Asaga's art project, and knowing she was one to quickly get angry, he hoped she would try looking for him so she could yell at him like his girlfriend that she wasn't. Luckily, he was right, and Asagi used her genius to locate them after learning from Yaes that they'd been missing for some hours. As soon as that was solved, they started bickering about the same guy who was chilling on an isolated island with another girl. Yaes made them understand that their true enemy was actually Yukina, who had all the time to seduce Kojou on the island, so they decided to call a truce for the moment. When Asagi asked what relationship she had with Kanes, Sayaka explained that she was the only clue to finding the princess of Aldager who disappeared before they could meet. On the island, Kojou woke up in the middle of the night to discover Yukina wasn't sleeping by his side, so he decided to look for her around. After searching around, he stumbled on a plotless girl in a pond who looked exactly like Kanes, and was so hot that his vampire urges kicked it uncontrollably. He managed to calm himself by feeding off his nosebleed, but by the time he looked at the pond again, the girl was gone and Yukina showed up behind him plotless, ready to decapitate him for staring at her. As usual, she called him a shameless perv who came to peep at her while she was bathing. However, he informed her that her flatness traumatized him rather than aroused him, and he was actually looking at someone else in the pool who looked like Kanes, but was more mature. Although she didn't believe a word he said, she made him give her his jacket, after which they tried to look around hoping to find the girl who wasn't Kanes. While searching, they noticed a boat coming onto the island, which made Kojou happy that their help had arrived. However, she made him shut up as she already noticed the boat belonged to Magus Craft, the organization Kanes' dad worked for. The idiot pair are easily located with the searchlight, and as a result, some soldiers from the boat began to shoot at them. Yukina made him duck, instructing him to sit his ass where he was, after which she approached enemy lines and used her spell-based karate to take care of the first wave. However, the soldiers rose up almost immediately and surrounded them again despite taking so much damage. Just then, the soldiers are shot down by a bolt of light that came from the top of a cliff where a girl was holding a curse gun. She invited them to join her, introducing herself as Folia, the princess of Aldager, who knew he was the fourth progenitor of Japan. She explained that she just used her last bullet on the soldiers who were cyborgs and that Kojou should destroy their ship with his familiar's powers, but he asked if they couldn't get off the island with the boat, so she explained that it was being controlled by a mothership and that it had more cyborgs ready to be deployed. As the last line of defense against the enemies, Kojou confronted the new set of cyborgs, blocking their bullets with a force field before summoning Regulus, who laid waste to them alongside the boat. On the ship where Kanes was actually being held hostage, her father reported to his superiors that she had obtained a new level of angel foe that was difficult to control. The bitch CEO was displeased by this information since they wouldn't be able to sell her if she couldn't be controlled. However, Kensei revealed that she was bound to always go into stasis once she finished her mission, which meant that she wouldn't rebel. Beatrice informed him that the fourth progenitor was already captured on their island, so he should make plans to use him as a catalyst to unlock Kanes' highest level of angel foe. Back on the island, Kojou decided to ask why Folia looked almost identical to Kanes, so Folia revealed she was her grandfather's illicit child, making Kanes her aunt. She claimed that Magus Craft had been after her for some time because they needed her blood as a medium to activate the ultimate angel foe, which is an artificial angel. Just then, they spotted another ship heading for the island and dumb Kojou almost blew it up but was stopped by smart-ass Yukina who noticed it wasn't a hostile vessel. Out of the ship came Kensei who revealed that he had already successfully made the artificial angels who could resist going berserk by feasting on their comrades' spirits in a ritual ceremony. His two accomplices from Magus Craft claimed that they planned to weaponize the angel foe so Folia should just surrender so that they could use her blood to create thousands more vessels. They then opened a box where Canis was packed, after which Kensei used a freaking remote to turn her on like a Barbie doll. Once got into battle mode, Yukina launched her spear in hopes that it would shut off her magic circuit. However, she was repelled as divine energy was not the same as the demon magic the spear was designed to counter. She decided to try again but was blocked by the unhinged Taylor Swift who used a weapon possessed by a familiar spirit to battle her. At the same time, Canis took to the sky to activate a sonic wave that resonated with all living creatures, after which she shot spears of light from her wings towards Kojou. He focused on dodging her attacks for a while, hoping to get through to her with words. However, when he was backed to a corner, he unleashed his two familiars who are unable to harm her, as Kensei explained she had already transcended the human realm. The next time she shoots the spears of light from her wings, Kojou is hit by one and passes out immediately. When she saw that he was hurt, Canis lost control in a frenzy that destroyed everything around with a tornado and ice magic, so Kensei and his accomplice made themselves scarce as they didn't give two fucks what happened to her. Meanwhile, Sayaka found one of Magus Craft's secret facilities where she fought a bunch of cyborgs who didn't give her much of a challenge because of her bow's ability. After she was done, Natsuki showed up and thanked her for doing all the hard work for her while she watched the spectacle. As a reward for her good deeds, she informed her that Folia was still alive, and that she was trapped on the same island as Kojou and Yukina. Meanwhile, Canis's rampage had created a giant pile of ice where she slept peacefully in the middle of it while the blizzard she caused outside continued to expand. The trio managed to stay safe thanks to Yukina's spear, which created a barrier. However, the main problem was that the wound she inflicted on Kojou wasn't healing as it should. Folia explained that they are incapable of healing an injury caused by an angel. However, she would try to reach into his subconscious to awaken a familiar that had resistance to divine magic. She then stripped and began touching Kojou, which annoyed Yukina because she didn't need to show off her giant plot to give him her blood. She reminded her that since Kojou is a virgin pervert whose vampire urges are only activated by women, she had to give it her all. When she tried kissing him, Yukina stopped her again, stating she didn't have to intervene as she had a duty as his observer to look out for him. She finally backed away, allowing Yukina to cut herself and feed him her blood through his mouth. Kojou subconsciously woke up and feasted on her violently until his wound healed and he came back to life once again. Kojou opened his eyes, totally confused at the sight of Yukina laying under him, so Folia quickly explained the sacrifice she had to make to bring him back to life. She told him the situation of things and how they were trapped in a fucking ice created by Princess Elsa who had lost control. She noticed that he didn't unlock a new familiar despite feeding on Yukina, so she kissed him and asked if she was attractive enough to help him power up. At this point, Kojou just accepted that he was scum and allowed her to sit on him, after which he took her blood on her command. Together they broke out of the ice tower to confront Kensei, who was a shitty adoptive dad who thought wearing an earring made him badass. To justify his actions, he claimed that he loved her so much as she was his sister's child, so he decided it'd be best to make her a divine being who would be accepted by God to gain eternal happiness. Just then they are attacked by Magus Crafts, who have come with two angels they secretly cloned unknown to Kensei. When the bitch started to blab about her plans to also clone Canis using Folia's blood, Kojou became angry that she wanted to harm his budding harem, and surprisingly, Yukina jumped in front of him to seal her spot as his first love. When the angels attacked again, Kojou created a barrier that he used to negate the attacks, and at the same time, Canis broke free from her ice prison ready to rampage again. Yukina faces Beatrice in a battle where they both seemed evenly matched at first. However, Yukina closed the distance and used her magic jujutsu to destroy her guts, and then she continued to land consecutive blows on her jaw, making her see imaginary stars. Yukina asked her to hand over the remote control for the angels, but the bitch decided to call her partner to intervene, only for her to discover Folia had already defeated the pathetic cannon fodder excuse for a werewolf. Beatrice decided to make one last desperate move to kill herself along with Folia, and Yukina. However, Folia began to chant a long incantation that summoned an artificial holy sword which she used to negate her familiar's ability. Beatrice was stunned as to how she was able to use a holy sword without a ship fueling its spiritual energy, but Folia revealed she summoned a spirit into her body, making her a temporary circuit, and with that power she defeated the bitch once and for all. At the other end, Kojou watched with a heavy heart as Kanase was forced to endure so much pain and suffering in the name of transcending to a higher being. He activated his third familiar called Mercury, a two-headed giant dragon that chopped off her wings with ease. However, she simply grew a more powerful wing with the surrounding magic energy, and since there was no more divine magic, Yukina used her spear to shut off her magic circuit while Mercury devoured the remaining residual of the angel foe. It was only after the battle that Natsuki and Sayaka arrived with a boat, probably intentionally because Natsuki absolutely hated working for her pay. Later that day, Yaze interrogated Kensei and asked why he turned his daughter into an angel when he could just turn her into the Kardashians. He revealed that the appearance of a fourth progenitor was a sign of a greater calamity, and he was only trying to prepare a weapon that could save them when the time came. Not long after, the Demon District is packed full of decorations and visitors due to the Halloween fiesta beginning the following day. Yukina claimed the season would open a gateway for spirits and witches to communicate with the world, so she warned him to keep his familiars in check since he doesn't have full control of them yet. They noticed a girl being molested in the cramped train, but when Kojou decided to play the hero, he was labeled a perv and accused of being the molester by Nagisa's homeroom teacher. When she discovered it was Kojou, she quickly apologized while Natsuki showed up claiming she had already caught the real molester. Kojou was surprised she was the one wearing a school uniform earlier, which made her explain she was only disguising herself to catch the molester who had been on a spree recently. When he complimented her new look, she scolded him for treating her like a child, but in his defense, he claimed he couldn't help the fact that she was a loli. That night, two witches fought a bunch of island police who were only armed with guns even though they were protecting an island where supernatural beings exist. The control tower informed the ground forces that the attackers were the notorious Class 1 mages called the Mayor Sisters, and seeing that they were easily recognized, they used their grimoire magic to finish off the police force before their arch-enemy the Witch of Void was alerted of their presence. The next day, everyone tagged along with Kojou, who wanted to welcome his childhood friend who was visiting him after a long time. Everyone was eager to see if it was a girl or boy, so he showed them an old picture of him and his friend during his basketball days. They decided to stop judging him after seeing that it wasn't a girl after all. But that's when a beautiful girl showed up from above and jumped on Kojou, surprising everyone who assumed the friend was a boy. He introduced the girl named Yuma to his group of friends, after which they went to town to have fun visiting different Halloween stands. When Kojou received a call from Sayaka and Folia explaining that before they could leave the island, they were warped to the opposite side of the island. Yaze and Asag were also informed of an attack on the west side of the island, which made them head out immediately. Sayaka explained that they were stuck in the location and couldn't leave no matter how hard they tried. The Star also showed up to inform them that Natsuki had been missing since morning and she hadn't been able to contact her ever since. Back at home, Kojou wanted to take his bath, but his door somehow led to Yukina's apartment's bath, which was being occupied by Astarte and Kanase. He went ahead to report the situation to Yukina, who was more focused on his perverted history than the fact that he got warped into her apartment. They surmised that the incident might be connected to what happened with Sayaka and Folia, so they decided not to go out for the night. Back in his apartment, he is startled by Yuma, who shows up behind him, causing him to drop his glass cup, which shatters on the ground. The dumb idiot tried to pick it up with his bare hands but only got injured, so Yuma quickly stopped the bleeding by sucking his blood before giving him first aid. She suddenly made a move on him on the couch, causing a familiar to appear and hypnotizing him in the process. When he woke up the next morning, he noticed he looked weird, so he went to the mirror and discovered that he was now in Yuma's body. He went to Yukina's apartment to explain the weird situation he found himself in, only to be dragged into a hentai fest where the girls were changing into their Halloween costumes. Meanwhile, Asagi was also plagued with several complaints about misplaced signs and missing people, but since she already ran several diagnostic tests and couldn't find any bugs, she concluded that it might be because the space around the island was distorted. With the help of her AI, she began to investigate the witches who reportedly infiltrated the island recently, as well as some incidents of space distortion that happened in the past, hoping to find a connection. Back at home, Kojou revealed that he was in Yuma's body, so they started to ask him several personal questions only he would know. After establishing that he was indeed Kojou, they asked where his body was. However, he had no idea and only narrated how he blacked out after Yuma kissed him the previous night. They checked around his apartment, and not only could they not find Yuma in his body, but Nagisa was also missing, which made him worried that she might have been abducted. Yukina told him not to worry since Nagisa made breakfast before she left. It was unlikely that she was forcefully taken. She told him Yuma was probably only after his body, but not in the way he thinks but as a vampire, who is the fourth progenitor. Since it was impossible to swap bodies with magic, Yukina surmised that Yuma distorted space to connect his senses with hers, which meant that she was the cause of the warped distortion plaguing the town. Elsewhere, the mayor's witches, who seem to be working with Yuma by protecting her grimoire, are suddenly attacked by Dimitri on a rooftop. They tried to cast a spell to attack him, but Yuma arrived to stop it and introduced herself to Dimitri as the daughter of the Witch of Notaria. Meanwhile, Asagi managed to reprogram the traffic database to update itself despite the distortion, allowing regular humans to go about their business without much trouble. Everyone headed into town to have fun, but Kojou could only freak out because they were so calm despite the fact that his body might be misused by Yuma. Yukina made him calm down by explaining they have a means of negating the spell with her spear. However, it would destroy the caster's mind and might harm his body, so they agreed it would be best to look for an alternative method. He then brought up a big problem as he wanted to use the toilet in Yuma's body. They all stood against it even though he couldn't possibly control his physiology, and Yukina told him to drop dead first before they let him pee. Back at the tower, Yuma revealed that she planned to use Kojou's body to release her mother, who was imprisoned in a prison barrier under the island. She proposed they strike a deal as she would ensure other strong criminals would also be released, as they might be able to give him an interesting challenge that might cure his boredom. Once she activated a new spell, Kojou recognized the wavelength of his magic, but before he and Yukina could head to its location, they were warped from the restaurant. At the same time, hundreds of island police showed up in their choppers to stop the witches. However, the sisters unleashed a tree familiar that couldn't be harmed by physical attacks but had maximum attack potential. On their way to the tower, the girls continued to be warped backwards in weird locations, making them unable to reach the tower. Just when they thought all hope was lost, Yuma got a message from Asagi instructing them to follow her instructions to bypass the distortion. It turned out it wasn't Asagi, but the AI and Yaes were working together to help Kojou get to the tower before the prison was opened. Kojou and Yukina then used the map sent to them to find the shortest route to the tower, using the distortion to their advantage until they arrived at Yuma's location. He immediately asked Yuma to return his body, but she told him to chill for a bit until he achieved what he came to do. Dimitri also tried to persuade him to wait until the prison barrier was opened, which would unleash world-class criminals that he would eliminate to feed his thirst for battling powerful opponents. Once he disappeared, the witches took both Yukina and Kojou hostage with their creepy tree familiar. They are suddenly freed from its grasp by Folia as well as Sayaka, who boasted that she was the strongest mage in the city. When she asked who the cosplaying girl was, Yukina explained that it was actually Kojou, her BFF, which made her freak out, and even Folia was disturbed as she planned on making plot with him to bear a powerful heir. Just then, the prison started materializing in the physical world, so Kensei, who was temporarily released to assist them, explained that they had a few more minutes to stop Yuma before she finished the ritual. Folia told Kojou and Yukina to chase after Yuma while the rest of them deal with the witches. However, they are surrounded by the tree familiar to stop them from interfering with Yuma's plans. Kensei quickly opened a portal that took them close to the manifesting prison, where Kojou tried to talk sense into Yuma, who had become a full-blown evil villain. She revealed that she wasn't a real person but simply a test tube baby made as a tool to break the prison barrier and free the Witch of Notaria. She claimed that the original plan was to sacrifice 10,000 souls to break the prison barrier. However, Kojou conveniently became the fourth progenitor, so they decided to use his immense magic powers instead. He made his familiar use Regulus's magic to completely release the prison barrier, but the familiar died in the process, and Yuma was injured as the progenitor's familiar was too powerful for them to control. She headed into the uncompleted prison barrier, with Yukina and Kojou following closely behind, but they were soon shocked to find Natsuki sitting helplessly in the middle of the barrier. Yuma revealed that Natsuki was the jailer door and key to the prison barrier, since she was the only one who could use the sealing technique, and as a result she had been sleeping inside the barrier for 10 years. Kojou argued that it was impossible as Natsuki was a teacher in their school, so he further explained that what they were used to was an illusion she created from her sad soul. To break the barrier, she would have to kill Natsuki, but Kojou asked her if her actions would make her life more meaningful, but she told him she couldn't go against her programming as a tool. Kojou tried to convince her to join his harem, where she'd be loved and not used like a tool. However, she thanked him for his kind gesture, but proceeded to strike Natsuki with his familiar, only to be blocked by Yukina. Back at the tower, the girls cut the tree familiar as much as they could, but it just kept growing back endlessly, prompting Folia to recall an incident where an entire forest was destroyed overnight. She assumed the familiar was made from the forest, so they gave up on cutting down the trees. She activated her artificial holy sword, which she used to cleanse the area around them, while Sayaka used her bow to break the curse of the familiar, causing it to return to its natural state before disappearing. Using her spear, Yukina bodied the night familiar, easily dispersing it before proceeding to checkmate Yuma, who looked like she was defenseless. However, she warped behind and used her familiar to destroy the roof, causing debris to crush Natsuki, but Kojou anticipated the move and managed to move Natsuki away in time. The after effects of the distortion spell began to weigh heavily on Yuma, but she still wanted to release her mother or die trying, so Yukina activated her spear's power to negate the distortion spell. However, she stopped when it mattered most and was struck down by the night familiar. Yuma assumed that she was so in love with Kojou that she wouldn't bring herself to strike his body, as the spear might kill Kojou for real. Although this was true, Kojou held the spear, giving her the courage so that they both attacked together. But she warped to dodge the attack, and even though Kojou anticipated the move and threw the spear to her new location, the night familiar shielded Yuma in the last moment, but Yukina kicked the spear with so much force that it destroyed the familiar and pierced her, causing the distortion magic to be negated and returning Kojou back to his body. After the battle, the cunning loli woke up and revealed she was pretending to be unconscious all through the battle to save her strength in case Kojou turned out to be a useless vampire. She then asked what Yuma would do now that she had failed, but she told them her job was done and she was now free to do what she loved. But unfortunately, she was suddenly stabbed by her familiar, who was being controlled by her mother's consciousness, and while they were distracted, Natsuki was also stabbed from behind, causing her to pass out.